Welcome to the Neurovisionary Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Sunshine. Today I'm going to build on the previous podcast on the Autistic Sense of Self by exploring research studies that offer a neuro-affirming lens, thus providing new insights into autistic identity, camouflaging, friendship, and the relevant mental health challenges faced by many autistic people. We know that autistic people often use strategies of masking or camouflaging to hide their autistic traits in social or public settings. Over time, this creates excess stress and elevated risks of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. These mental health difficulties trace back to the vulnerable sense of self autistic individuals experience in relation to others. This is what defined autism as a social deficit. So what are we really dealing with in regards to how medicine and research has perceived autistic people? Most research has used a cognitive and linguistic lens as assessment tools, determining what is normative or divergent. This approach defined autism as a social disorder with deficits in theory of mind, sense of self, autobiographical memory, social identity, and communication. Some earlier research went so far as to claim autistic individuals lacked interest in human relationships. It's well known that autistic individuals, specifically females, often use masking or camouflaging to hide autistic traits to fit into society, which in turn has made timely diagnosis problematic. For these reasons, researchers developed the Camouflaging Autistic Traits Questionnaire to understand the experiences and strategies used by autistic adults, while providing a tool for clinicians engaged in assessment. Let's look at the three main themes that arose. First, we have compensation, where an individual with communication difficulties learns scripts or strategies for matching neurotypical social behavior in order to blend in. Then we have masking, unconscious and conscious strategies for hiding autistic traits by performing a neurotypical persona. And finally, there is assimilation, which is how a person may work to manage distressing social environments by monitoring their actions or denying the discomfort they are experiencing. We know already that behaviors of camouflaging begin in early childhood, becoming a lifetime of unconscious performance. When I think back to my experiences before diagnosis and how many different coping strategies I was navigating, it's really quite shocking. I would always drive myself to an event. Once I hit my limit, which was always before others, I'd leave without saying goodbye. I also experienced these incredible hive outbreaks, especially when sensory stimulus was at an all-time high, like a bar with a band and tons of people crowding in and all the talking, and it just gets insane, right? Yeah, there's a lot of internalized feelings that come with those experiences. My nervous system was completely exacerbated by the level of stimulus of the social environment. In other research in 2024, they proceeded to explore the relationship between autistic masking and symptoms of depression and anxiety in connection to self-esteem, interpersonal trauma, authenticity, and involvement in autistic community. This showed that autistic people often experienced forms of bullying or being shamed for their autistic traits. Many of these events played a role in greater experiences of emotional and physical abuse. Masking was found in direct correlation to lower self-esteem, reduced authenticity, higher levels of anxiety, depression, and self-alienation. This study demonstrates that autistic social difficulties may not be based in deficit as much as related to the impacts of trauma from abuse and stigma. What is the difference between solitude and loneliness turned isolation? I have no doubt that if you are autistic and listening, this particular subject may bring up some difficult feelings. Solitude versus isolation and the dangers of loneliness is a huge topic which deserves a greater look. The out-of-date stereotype asserts that autistic people lack interest in personal relationship, with autistic people at a much higher risk for mental health distress. This study helped to understand the relationship between sensory differences and loneliness. This phenomena of distress was associated with experiences of being misunderstood, excluded, or even silenced by the inability to attend traditional neurotypical social engagements due to sensory sensitivity. These findings finally bring to light the direct correlation between sensory sensitivity and difficulties in making social connections. This also reveals the significant difference between chosen solitude, which many of us know as autistic individuals is absolutely necessary, and the loneliness one can feel as isolation when they are unable to socialize in the ways society deems are normal. This brings us to the autistic relationship quandary and the principles of autistic friendship. This neuroaffirming study sought to challenge the deficit-based views of autism while exploring how autistic people perceive and understand friendship. This opens a new conversation around neurodivergent forms of relating. Instead of using neurotypical social behavior to assess autistic individuals, researchers expand on the double empathy theory, proposing that communication difficulties between autistic and non-autistic individuals may not stem from an autistic deficit, but instead from different communication styles based on neurotype. While drawing from disability studies and neurodiversity concepts, researchers identified several overarching themes. These showed that in regards to friendship, autistic people are focused on a spectrum of understanding, which falls on a continuum including neurocommunication and neurocultural learning. The three sub-themes found in their research included identifying with others, which focused on the value of mutual understanding and the active process of learning as a shared value. This is demonstrated through active friendship based on reciprocity, relatability, as well as shared presence. And lastly, the process of maintenance and activities of friendship are often based in building trust and a felt sense of connection through sharing versus doing. Our final study, conducted in 2023, they used social identity theory to place autistic individuals within their own social group, using participants between the ages of 15 and 22 for the reasons that this age group is when personal and social identity develops. There are also the added pressures of autistic minority stress, victimization by peers, and social anxiety. Results confirmed having a positive autistic identity, whereas a person is comfortable with and feels good about their autistic traits, contributes to a positive sense of self. In addition, feelings of solidarity within the autistic community reinforce psychological well-being. The summation of this research reinforces the need to move away from the deficit-based ideology toward a neuro-affirming reconceptualization of autism. I hope you have enjoyed today's presentation and that it may offer greater self-compassion and understanding. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, like, and share. It helps me also feel connected to you. And if you're interested in receiving my free guide to working with your dreams, which is one of my favorite ways to do personal healing and unmasking, you can go to www.neurovisionarydream.com. Thanks again for being here, and until next time, I'm Sophia Sunshine, and this is the Neuro Visionary Podcast.